The reading is from Revelation 17, verses 9 through 18. This calls for a mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Also, they are 7 kings, from whom 5 have fallen, 1 is living, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, that they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are united in yielding their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. Those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters that you saw where the whore is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the whore. They will make her desolate and naked. They will devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by agreeing to give the kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth.
If you were here last Sunday, we've been. I'm Trevor, by the way. I'm the pastor here, and we've been going through the book of Revelation, story by story, piece by piece. And last week, John, the angel shows John. It says a woman sitting on a beast on mountains, covering waters. And here the angel is explaining to John what he saw. And gosh, it makes your head spin when you look at some of this stuff, doesn't it? Now, we have to remind ourselves that we cannot look at things from the first century and try to answer the questions with 21st century answers. We have to look at it in the way that they were looking at it back then. And John lives in the first century, and he's writing in what is known at the time as apocalyptic language. And apocalyptic language means secrets revealed. And this apocalyptic language is full of metaphor and illustration and all of this kind of stuff. And the people that are receiving this would have understood that. But there are times when it really does sound confusing to a lot of folks, and including me. This is one of those things where I'm so glad that you're here at the 10:30, because the 9 o'clock sermon stunk. It was bad. So I'm really hoping that this one's better. It was because this one involves things like, it takes you to places that people have taken this, where they talk about like kings, and they say that there are 7 kings, and then there's the beast was an 8th king, but he's also a 7th king, and then there's some kings that were there for a short while, and you're just going, what are you doing here to me? You know, like this. And it's like something that I detest, and I don't know why we have it, and it's called math. I don't like math. I'm bad at math. I will Google it. I'm a calculator kind of guy. More importantly, if there's ever a number that I need, I just ask my wife, and she answers it for me. That's all I need. There's people that have taken those kings and the 8th and all of this kind of stuff, and they have tried to work it out to see exactly what he's talking about, and they try to use math. They try to think of it as like a code. They look at, for instance, they'll take, these are the emperors, because remember, the woman that they're talking about in this particular letter is Rome. They refer to it as Babylon, but it is Rome. It is the empire. It is the overpowering world power that has control over everything. And these emperors are in many ways worshipped like gods, and they are challenged to the early Christian church in a major way. And so when we talk about the kings of the woman and all of this kind of stuff, people have associated this with emperors. Now, these are the emperors that take us to about 96, because we believe that the Revelation was written anywhere between 94 and 96 AD. And so this is right around the time of where John is writing this letter. And Domitian was the emperor of the time. Domitian has the place in history. Tradition tells us that it was Domitian that actually exiled John to Patmos, that he's the one that said, get him out of here. But first, he tried to put him in a cauldron of burning oil. And tradition tells us that John walked away and said, ha, ha, ha. And so he said, I can't kill you, I'm going to get rid of you. And so this is where they're at here. Now, Domitian, I want to give you just a little bit of history. Domitian was the ruler at the time, but in his last 3 years, it was known as the Reign of Terror. Now, Domitian, something happened with him where he became overly paranoid. And he started to persecute political rivalries. He started to jail them. He would take them, put them in jail, and then he would confiscate their land. He got so paranoid that he sentenced his own cousin to death. He exiled his own niece. And he was one that felt that everybody should be a traditionalist in the sense of Roman religion. That means polytheism. That means multiple gods. That means you have shrines at home. That means pagan rituals. That means sometimes it involves sacrifice. And also, if you're an emperor, that also means that you're one of those gods. The cult of the empire was a place where people were worshiping the emperors, and they had statues of them and everything like that. So Domitian, as his paranoia started to grow more, he started to persecute people that were monotheistic, believed in one God. That's where the Christians and the Jews started to be persecuted again. Now, if you were a Christian at the time, it would remind you, and you would fear this, that you were going back to the days of Nero. Nero was a ruler that is in history of being the most cruel to the early church of any of the Roman emperors. There's this story that the city of Rome there was a fire, and Nero blamed the Christians and tortured and killed them in horrific ways. And so if you're in the early church, you are fearing that what you're seeing here is a repeat of this. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because when people look at the math of the emperors and they try to assign it with the kings and all of that kind of stuff, they think, okay, when they talk about that the beast is the 8th, but he's also part of the 7th, are they saying that in some way that Nero was repeated with Domitian and all of this kind of stuff, and they try to do all this math? And then there's some of them that even go to all of the emperors after. This is just the emperors, pardon the font, it's just, this is after John. So this is from 96 onward. There's a lot of kings here. You know, I mean, you can call them emperors, you can call them kings, whatever you want to do. But a lot of people that are trying to decipher Revelation spend a lot of time and a lot of math trying to work in what any of this means. I'm here to tell you, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a thing. It does not mean but it does tell us what the time that they were living. But it tells us something much more important than trying to decide what king was this and all of this kind of stuff. Before I tell you that, I want to tell you, I was on vacation. Residency. No, not residency. What is it called? Sabbatical. Try to put a fancy name on just sitting on your butt for a month, but this is, this is what I was doing. And so we took a trip and we took our dog Murray. Now Murray is 11. He's an old dog. And the one thing that, if you are, anybody a dog owner here? Okay. Anybody a cat owner? Not even going to talk to you. Dogs need consistency. They're like kids. They need to have consistency. If you mess with consistency, it can really screw them up a little bit. Me taking a month off, really, my dog got really used to me being there all the time. And now that I'm back, he's having to get used to me leaving and all of this stuff, and he's kind of going a little bonkers, because I'm not being consistent. Consistency is the one thing that happens in our world a lot. Now, we can say that we like routine. I'm a person that I do like routine. I like some consistency. And some people like willy-nilly stuff. They like to just, whatever the case may be. Well, I'm here to tell you that even if you're willy-nilly, that's your consistency. Did I just blow your mind? We're all in the same boat. So, Revelation is a letter to the early churches in Asia Minor. 7 churches, 7 small churches that are going through a rough time. They are seeing some repetition here, and they're seeing some consistency that they don't want. The consistency that they're seeing is the rise of emperors and the persecution of Christians. And to them, it's a very scary thing. Now, we live in a time right now where we can go to church. We can post on social media that we're here. We can put out signs. We can make a billboard. We can stand proud that we are here. In the first century, you couldn't do that. In the first century, you had to meet in secret. In the first century, you were worried that by just being in church, it could endanger your life. Now, I'm not sure in our Western culture if we can really ever grasp what that feels like. That even just coming into the building is a risk. They lived through the time of Nero, and they're living through the time of Domitian, where persecution is a real thing. Killing of Christians is a real thing. But it's important to them. Religion at this time, in the first century, was it was your life. It was not something, today we kind of have, I have work and I have this. And for some of us, religion is almost kind of like this offshoot. It's on the calendar, it's a schedule. We go to church on Sundays, but they lived and breathed it truly 24/7. It was their identity. It was so much a part of them. And so to grasp what the early Christian church was going through, their very being was threatened. But to them, it was so important to be there. But the consistency that they continued to see was the rise of emperors and the persecution of them for their way of life. Now, Domitian, during those 3 years, that reign of terror, he wanted people to worship the polytheism, meaning different gods and all of that kind of stuff. And so he's after all of those monotheistic people. Now, if you were a person in the first century, you had basically 2 options as a religious person. You could choose polytheism. You could choose the Roman way of worship. You could worship Roman emperors. They called it the cult of the emperor, whatever you want to call it, but you could worship that. You could make sacrifices. You could give into lustful behavior. You could do pretty much whatever you wanted. You could just hang on to that power of the empire and fall in line, and you'd be a free person, basically, because you're doing what they want you to do. The only other option that you really have as a church is following the Lamb. We just read here that the kings tried to defeat the Lamb. Your choice is following that. That means you don't take any part in any of this. That means that you do not get into the sacrifices or the power or the lust, or you do not give into the hatred of other people, all of this kind of stuff. You are following the Lamb, and that Lamb message is love. That's it. Their action over here was persecution. The action over here was invitation. They don't mix. They do not mix. But to them, it's frustrating. They don't have an army. They're following a religion that says, do not, and basically, he who kills by the sword dies by the sword. They're a peaceful movement. They're one of the first movements where people from other cultures are joining together for the first time to create things, to create love, to feed the poor, to help people find health care, education, all of this kind of stuff. That's the movement that they're doing here. And they feel defeated because once again, an emperor has risen that is saying, I don't like what you're doing, and I'm going to persecute you from it. It was not unheard of to sit in a small church and say, what happened to Kevin? Kevin was a common name in Rome. And then to learn that Kevin was taken away, that Kevin was murdered, that Kevin was killed, all because of doing the same thing that you're doing. You're reading a letter from a man that has been exiled because they couldn't kill him. And the letter is telling you to stay the course, stay the church. And it's telling you by the kings and all of this kind of stuff, it is acknowledging that repetition. It is acknowledging when it talks about the 8 kings and the 7 kings and the kings that are there for a little while, what John is telling them is that there will be emperors popping up all over the place. Down in front, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that rise and fall, and the evil will continue to rise and fall. That's what that whole message is, that the city, Rome, will continue to be a superpower. And when that becomes so big, just like in history, it will implode upon itself. It says that they start to fight, they start to infight, they start to go against each other. The powers that be start to vie for different power and all this kind of stuff. And the empire crumbles. It says that one consistency is that the love of the Lamb will continue to be victorious. It's assuring them that whatever you're going through, that the Lamb will be victorious. Now, doesn't that make you feel better? Let me pause just for a second. Let's put this into perspective again. You are sitting in the camera operators are going to love me because I'm walking all over the place, but you're sitting in that first century church. You're in Asia Minor. Your church maybe had 30 people. Now it's down because of the reign of terror. Maybe it's down now to about 20. You've lost people because they've been caught coming to worship Christ. You are afraid. You're mourning because people that you love have been removed. You're frustrated because the reason that they've been removed is because of doing exactly what you're doing, of worshiping the one true God. This is your life. And there are people that are persecuting, and in your current setting, it feels like they're winning. You get this letter from a person that you thought was a great leader, and he's been taken away because of that reign of terror. And he's telling you, this will repeat. This persecution of you, this will repeat. The evil will rise, that will repeat. They will implode upon themselves, that will repeat. And in the long run, the Lamb will continue to be victorious over evil. Stay the church. Now, what kind of a pep talk is that, really, when you feel like your whole existence is crumbling? And it would be so much easier just to join in on who seems to be winning the day. It would be so much easier just to go with the flow. But you're told to keep the course. The one thing that we always forget about Revelation, it is a pep talk. The whole point of Revelation, it's about God defeating evil. It's about the end game. It's about God finally destroying evil and rescuing God's people. That's what it's all about. But along the way, it continually, this is the part we want to escape over, it continually acknowledges that this sucks. that when you are in it, it hurts. It feels bad. It feels like evil wins. Revelation is a continual acknowledgement of that. And it is a continual acknowledgement that God is with you. That when you hurt, God hurts. This voice of the lion is presented as a lamb. The lamb wins by the sacrifice. The followers of the lamb win by the sacrifice. It doesn't make it easy. The first century church, it was devastatingly hard. There were people that were tortured, and all they had to do to end the torture was to say that they no longer believed. They gave their life, and they lived with that torture to hang on to what they believed, because to them it was that real. But it didn't escape the fact that it was painful and it hurt. They lived in a time in the first century where it felt like the world was going crazy. People were against each other. Families were separated. People that were raised in pagan households were now joining this Christian faith, and the people that were part of this Roman tradition could not understand what they were thinking, and they were at odds at each other. Jewish people that were raised Jewish, there were some that were saying, why are you joining this group instead of this group? And they were at odds with each other. People were at war with one another, and it was devastating. And John is saying, this will repeat. And you've got to continue to stay the course. You've got to continue to know that the end game, there is something waiting for you, but along the way, Christ walks with us. Now, I'm talking about the first century here. This has nothing to do with present time. Actually, it does. People are at odds in our world today. You know, I'm not, there are people that have always wanted me to preach just a political message. There's people that have wanted me to preach one social justice message, one thing, just want to be one thing. And I've upset them all. Because I follow Christ. I follow that lamb, and that lamb challenges everything. And it makes me stand up for everybody. It makes me pray not for one team to get squashed over another team. It makes me pray that we all sit at the same table and break bread together again, like we used to. And it hurts. I've never had my life challenged because of my faith, but I have been challenged in other ways of just getting along with each other, and it makes me sad that that's an issue. We have people in this room right now. I know we're low today. People are on vacation and all that kind of stuff. This is what church looks like if only the cool people showed up. So we have people that come from different stories. We have people that have different backgrounds, different pains, that have suffered different tragedies. We have people that have had different political views. I hate the fact that political views helps, the fact that defines whether a person is a friend or an enemy. When we follow a God that says, just love your neighbor. Today, I'm not here to walk us through and say that everything is going to be fine. I'm praying that we know that. I'm praying that we know that everything's going to be fine. Today, I'm here to walk and connect us to that church in the first century and to acknowledge that it does hurt sometimes. And that's okay. It's okay for us to acknowledge that, because that's where our faith comes into play. We don't come to God just in the times where everything is rosy. We are supposed to come to God, just like the psalmist before, to come to God and get down on our knees and say, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Help me through this. This is our time now. We are that church. We are reading that letter that tells us to stay the course. And staying the course means telling Christ how you feel and praying for a day that we all live in peace with one another. Until then, our job is to love God, to love ourselves, and to love our neighbor. And our neighbor is everyone. We pray for that. Would you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, we have differences, and there are times when we feel angry. We see the floods, we see natural disasters, we see political division. We just wonder, when is this going to stop? Help us to remember there are things happening in the cosmos that are so much bigger than us. Help us to remember that you have a plan. Help us to keep that faith. And as we walk in this faith, help us to remember what our role in it is, to emulate as best we can the Lamb, the Christ, the Jesus. Help us to break bread together, to love each other, to love you, and to love ourselves. In Jesus' name, Lord, we pray. Amen.